Okay, so let's take that Christensen painting into Photoshop and let's do a study based on what we've learned. As usual, I will start with a color field, and now that we know what grays are, we actually can identify this. This is a field of cooler and warmer grays kind of intermingling together. Gives me kind of a starting pool to work out of. Now I'll do my basic drawing. By the way, this study took me 15 minutes in real time, sped up to about 7 minutes, so you're seeing it at about 2 times speed. And I'm just noticing, I'm going to start with my basic colors, kind of like with my study, how I define the basic colors first. I'm not going to start with values this time. I'm just going to start with some basic colors. So you notice I'm just laying in this warmer orange for the rock, that kind of reddy kind of orange sort of thing, laying that in with no mind for values yet. And then I'll go into the cooler versions of those reds. That is the red that airs more on the plum side of red, the violet side. And I will put those in. Okay, no values. I'm just kind of putting basic color swatches in now, based on what I learned with my study in the last session. And then that grade 8's down to even grayer reds. And then here's some of those blue shadows, just indicating some of those. And then I'll indicate some of these slightly warmer purple shadows. So I've got my kind of 3-pronged color approach. And now I'll start actually working into this, adding values, of course, to define the forms and the light and shadow. And, you know, of course, value and color temperature together are what create the illusion of light. So this is where light and color come together, value and color temperature. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm getting the rock in shadow. Most of this foreground rock is in shadow. So what I want to do is I want to gray down the orange and find varieties within that. So varieties of warm grays to get that rock in shadow. And I will build up as I go. I'll build up patchworks of color as I go. Just like I did with the study previous, I get some swatches down and then I can evaluate. And as I build up that tapestry of color, I can add to it. So I just need to get something down to get me in the ballpark. And as you can see, I very quickly get myself in the ballpark just with a basic knowledge of this is a warm light, it's a sunlight. So anything in the sunlight is going to be warmer, anything in the shadow is going to be cooler. So with that as the catalyst, I can block in some basic warm and cool grays and start creating a context from which I can paint. So this painting is a lot of fun to do because it really is intricate and there's so many subtleties within these colors. And again, you'll notice there are really no hugely saturated colors. I would say the rock in foreground has the most saturated oranges. Then that's it. Everything else is more grayed and subdued. And that's kind of a common painting tactic you can use, and I'll talk about this a little more later. You can deploy kind of 1 or 2 saturated colors and let all the other colors be grayed down versions in between. And that just draws your attention and keeps your attention a little more honestly than if you just had, you know, tons of desperate saturated colors everywhere. So I'm blocking in the greens. They look green, but look at the color on the color chart. They're very grayed down. And that's what I mean. Those greens are not nearly as saturated as the rock. They look green in context. And you can see in that foreground rock how I successfully have a warmer orange in light and a cooler reddy orange in shadow. And again, when I say something like reddy orange, it's just because I don't know how to define it. I'm just thinking in terms of warmer or cooler. So if it's orange, I don't really think orange. I think, is it warmer or cool orange? And then I'll go there on the color wheel and then find the appropriate value of gray, the appropriate level of saturation, I should say, to apply to that warmer or cool orange. Okay, so you can see again how there is no right color. There's no right and wrong. There are no rules when it comes to color. There is just this principle of color temperature that you can adhere to. But within color temperature, like you'll notice, my study is deviating from the original painting. I'm not getting it color for color. That's not my intention. My intention is to get the relationship right, the general attitude of what these colors are doing, how they relate to each other. Like, what is the temperature of of the warmer red versus the cooler red. What is that relationship like? I don't really care to match Scott Christensen's exact colors because that doesn't matter. So you can bet that Scott Christensen was not matching the exact colors from nature when he painted. And I know this because I've studied with Scott. And one of the big lessons he says is you're not trying to match color for color. What you're trying to do is understand the relationships of such marks on your painting. Okay, and it's all temperature. So is what's cooler, the shadow in the very background or the shadow of the rock in the foreground? Well, the background's cooler because it's actually in the blues. But the shadow in the foreground rock is still a cool shadow in comparison to its warm light, okay? But it holds its place as a separate unit than the background. The background is working in a totally different context than the foreground. The background is made of much more subtle grays. And you'll see as I'm painting now in the middle ground, where the middle ground kind of meets the background, you'll see how I'm just very, in a nuanced way, trying to manipulate these colors so they merge and kind of have a conversation together that's not jarring. I'm trying to get these grays in the right ballpark together so they all live in the same context. Those colors I'm painting in the background would be completely inappropriate for the foreground, and vice versa. This is the power of grays. It's always you're in this context of, what's the color temperature generally? Is it like a warm light and cold shadow? Which one? And then once you have the answer to that, you have to then ask, is it a warmer warm or a cooler warm? Like if you're in the warm light, is it a warm warm or a cooler warm? Like the middle ground where I'm painting now, those lights are cooler warms because they're cooler reds. They're like pinky reds. And then in the foreground, that's a warmer red, which is bordering on orange, right? So you're always asking yourself these questions. Here I am now putting in some very grayed down purples in the shadow of the rocks. Now, these don't exist in the Christensen painting. The reason I'm painting them is to show you how it's all about context. I'm in an area of cool shadow. So within that context, certainly I can dip into the purples and add some grayish purples there. I don't want to ramp up the saturation of those purples though, because then it would be too cool for the context of that shadow. Okay, so you can see how this is the most intricate part of painting, the most personal part. Please expect to fail here. Okay, I don't want anyone to think that you can just watch a lecture on this and then all of a sudden, bam, you know how to do it. This takes hundreds of paintings, thousands maybe. You're going to fail. Okay, I fail all the time. I paint from life. I fail all the time. It's about building up knowledge from these failures and getting a feel for how these temperatures work. So I'm going to show you to the best of my ability and break it down to the best of my ability. But when it comes to your assignments and your future paintings, please do not get discouraged if you fail. This is a good thing. It means you're trying, okay? And of course, I'm here to help you, and I'm here to help you know which way to turn if you do fail. Okay, and of course, your successes are great as well. And you will have successes in these 8 weeks too. It'll be a mix of both. That's life as an artist. And notice what I'm doing here. I'm taking that cool shadow and just warming it just a bit with that purple. And I love doing that. I love when you have like an area of cool shadow and you're just warming it a bit using your knowledge of grays, keeping those temperatures subtle. And here we have our finished study. I think speed is kind of important here, just to get your feet wet in comparing these temperatures. Again, there's no detail here. We don't need detail. There's no room for detail. The goal is not even good drawing. It's just to get an understanding and a feel for how these grays and color temperatures interact with each other.